Hey there, I'm Christopher Schoenwald, and welcome to Life as a show intently focused on helping people find their professional pathway by exploring and unearthing the details of jobs from around the world. Creative expression is found everywhere. Think of all the different forms of art, music, and architecture, for example. This ability of humans to think in an abstract manner is certainly one of the defining traits of the human species. Not only do we appreciate it, we build businesses, lives, and modes of communication around it. And to add, creativity, as we all know, can breed further inspiration and lead to even more development. Well, on today's show, we have a guest who lives, breathes, and immerses himself in this world of creative thought and dissemination. And quite frankly, his business depends on it. Adding to the complexity of what he does is that he requires teams of people that are also equally tuned into harnessing their own creative faculties to align and ultimately get behind big ideas time and time again in order to create something of value for the clients his business serves. Welcome to the world of ad agency work. All right, welcome to the show. So, Marc Wesseling is the co-founder and director of UltraSuperNew, or USN, an independent creative agency born and raised in Harajuku with offices and art galleries in Tokyo and Singapore. Since 2007, the international USN team of 60 plus people has been serving clients such as Red Bull, Unilever, Heineken, Mini, Pernod Ricard, Skin Condoms, Asics, Adobe, EA Sports, Puma, PayPal, Tabasco, and many other top-tier brands. And USN is a highly decorated outfit, with award and recognition not limited to Campaign Asia's Pacific Agency of the Year Award in 2020 and 2021, as well as Japan Korea Independent Agency of the Year, Silver, and Gold prizes. So yeah, these guys do well. And outside of their ad work and awards, from 2012, USN also began operating art galleries at both offices to give a platform to the makers and creators of these cities, which USN operates within. Now, back to Marc. He's from Amsterdam, but has been living in Japan since 2002 and in Singapore since 2016. Before Tokyo, he'd been working in advertising and digital media at various companies in San Francisco, New York, and Hong Kong. On the personal side, Marc is addicted to snowboarding, and as such, the Japanese Alps is where he's at and spends most of his weekends during the winter months. Marc has his Master of Law LLM degree from the University of Leiden in media law. So, with all that said, Marc, it's an absolute honor to welcome you to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've had this circled on the calendar for a little while now. Your work speaks for itself, all you've accomplished and everything else. I think the listeners are really going to enjoy this conversation, as will I. So, yeah, really excited to get into it. And why don't we? Within that vein of thought, I've got the first segment lined up, and it's something called Coloring Wikipedia. And basically, it's a segment that I just kind of read off a definition of the guest profession or the industry that that person's involved with. And I like to do it for a couple of reasons. One, it kind of brings everybody up to speed. Everyone gets a better understanding of what it is you do, what you're involved with. And then two, sometimes Wikipedia is on, the definition hits, and other times it's just flat out off. And thirdly, as well, I think each individual puts their own stamp on what they do, and that also kind of makes it unique and offers up some sort of interesting vantage points within the profession itself. So, with that in mind, I do have you down here, not for the profession itself, but for, I guess, the industry, kind of representative of the industry and the company that you run, basically, which is an advertising agency. So, let me just read that off according to Wikipedia, and maybe in the context of all that you do and over the course of your career and everything else, you can kind of comment after. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right. So, here we go. Advertising agency. An advertising agency, often referred to as a creative agency or an ad agency, is a business dedicated to creating, planning, and handling advertising, and sometimes other forms of promotion and marketing for its clients. An ad agency is generally independent of the client. It may be an internal department or agency that provides an outside point of view to the effort of selling the client's products or services, or an outside firm. An agency can also handle overall marketing and branding strategies for its clients, which may include sales as well. So there it is, a bit of a mouthful, but first impressions, what do you think of that, Marc?
Yes, but in Japan it's slightly different. Because the direct translation of an advertising agency in Japan is a kokuku dairiten,
Yeah.
and we are not referring ourselves to a kokuku dairiten because then you are in the Dentsu Hakuhodo ADK kind of world, and yeah, we tend to position ourselves as almost the opposite of those agencies. Of course, like Dentsu is just huge and massive and probably one of the most powerful companies in Japan. And
Yeah.
their business is not necessarily about, creativity, but more about media and reselling the media. And you get, like the creative for free, including the celebrities, etc. And that's why all those beer ads, for example, all look the same, or a lot of car ads look the
Yeah.
same because, yeah, they own the media which they need to resell, and they own the celebrities which they need to resell.
Yeah.
So yeah, why don't you just resell ads with celebrities in already, like TV, etc. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
It's almost
world
like a,
moves on.
yeah.
Digital is
It's like cookie cutter
yeah,
almost, isn't it? Right? Like a cookie cutter approach to it. Kind of
yeah.
just sort
I
of
don't
really
know that
simple.
expression, but
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So it's just kind of like a standardized almost model that's like, okay, we're going to apply this same sort of approach or strategy to every single campaign. Like it's not really individualized or personalized all that much. Like you said, kind of the creativity is something that's maybe lacking on their side. It's more standardization, if anything. They have all the resources
yeah,
available to them,
and
but
it's also their business model.
yeah,
Like, so when
that's what
we
I mean. Yeah.
started in 2007, we started off as a digital creative agency and to differentiate ourselves. Back in the days, funny enough, there were no digital agencies in Japan that could help clients, like from strategy to creative to production in a digital world.
Yeah.
Um, and when we won the Red Bull account in 2008, that pushed us to become full service. Full service meaning that we're also doing TV ads or OOH such as billboards or public transport
Yeah.
ads and so on. But winning the Red Bull account was also very defining for our positioning, which is heavily around more younger targets. Like, so at that time, of course, millennials, now also included Gen Z and
Yeah.
whatever generation comes next. And if you look at millennials and all the generations after, it's mobile first. That's
Yeah.
the key to the key access point to communication. And from there, you think further. While those conventional ad agencies, not only just Dentsu, but also the global big ones,
Right.
they still, like pat each other on the backs for, like making TV commercials, which
Yeah.
I don't think it's irrelevant, but it's just a part of the media mix.
Right.
And it's more about, like what is that story? What is that creative part? What is the insight that you can find to make communication that will move the needle for that product or service, or that will reach people's hearts, whether it's
Hmm.
humorous or whether it's emotional. And
Yeah.
like we are much more in that area than
Yeah.
formalized advertising. That's why
Yeah.
we don't really call ourselves an advertising agency.
So sorry. What would you call yourself then? Maybe you already answered that and I missed that. But what would you say
Yeah,
you?
it's a good point. Like we call ourselves a creative agency, but for some
Yeah.
people, it's also maybe too vague. Like some
Yeah.
people, they don't have enough knowledge about marketing, so they
Mm,
say like, oh, so you're doing PR. So well, PR is part
yeah.
of it. Like
Yeah.
it's creative agency is, as you said, because you understand
Yeah.
this world. It's finding creative solutions for complex creative problems,
Yeah.
and um, it's actually, like Accenture or all those like consultancy companies. They do it more on the sort of operational level. I think we're doing it from a creative level.
Okay. Yeah, I think that clarifies things, really nicely, especially for people, that are outside of the industry that aren't really tuned into all of this. I think that really like sheds a really bright light on it and it kind of like just clarifies a lot for people because I think that sort of nuance would be lost on most people. So yeah, I think this is the first gem of this conversation, quite frankly, Mark. Yeah. In
Mhm.
terms of, I guess that aspect as well. I mean, you have offices, of course, in Japan and Tokyo, but then also too, you have offices in Singapore as well, I understand.
Yeah.
In terms of your role, what is it like on the day to day of managing offices in both markets? I mean, they're both Asian markets, but they're both quite different, I'd imagine as well. I mean, it kind of probably
Yeah,
goes without
yeah, and
saying.
also the offices are quite different.
Yeah,
Tokyo is more established. We are in a fantastic office in Harajuku with like on Meiji Dori.
yeah,
So
the prime
and there are
spot.
about 50, 60 people working there. Like with solid teams. And in Singapore, we opened shop in 2016, and funny enough, Singapore, of course, is a much more international city than
Yeah,
Tokyo, and there's a huge expat community because that the
yeah.
country is built on expats.
Hmm.
Um, but like the first thing that people ask you always is sort of like, how long are you here? And at that
Mm.
time, I just arrived in Singapore. I said, well, I'm here just like a month ago. And then especially expats were saying like, oh, okay. And they were gonna tell me how Asia works. And I'm like, but you're in Singapore, and Singapore is all English speaking, and it's very
Yeah,
convenient and so
yeah,
on. But it's Asia light, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah, exactly. It's
it's
a good way of putting it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I don't need to tell you, like if you like wanna say you experience Asia, at least like learn the language, which you have to in Japan, and
yeah,
like indulge in and get to know the culture. Otherwise, your life
mm,
is becoming very difficult.
yeah,
All that
yeah,
stuff is not needed in Singapore. You can just live in
right,
your, for example, I'm Dutch. Like the Dutch community, they go to the Dutch club, they go to the
yeah,
Dutch school, they hang out with Dutch people. Yeah,
yeah,
they're technically in Asia, but
yeah,
so and in a way that was quite shocking for me because I also saw the traditional agencies or and they always had foreigners on the top, and then the locals doing the work, and
mm,
for me that doesn't work.
mm,
Maybe you can make amazing work in London or in New York,
right,
but it doesn't mean that you can do great work in, for example, in Singapore, because you
yeah,
don't know the culture.
yeah,
You're looking from it with a very Western point of view. So I just wanted to immediately go away from the expat scene as far as I could.
mm,
So we are close to Little India, Jalan Bazaar, in a hip, trendy area for locals. Like it's a very local area. My team is 100% local, very
mm,
young.
mm,
So they're more like a pirate ship who are, like sort of, fighting and less established, but
yeah,
it's great. Like, so when I come to Tokyo, I'm like, wow, okay, amazing teams and blah blah blah.
yeah.
And in Singapore, you come to the pirate ship, and good. It keeps me inspired, and
Yeah.
I
Is
like
there
it.
yeah, is there crossover there a little bit? I mean, like you just spoke to that point where like obviously the cultural points are very, very different, and then that
Yeah,
goes without saying. But at the same time, I guess like deriving inspiration from one, say within Singapore, like just different ideas and just like a fresh sort of approach. Like they don't know what they don't know probably at that point, like lots
yeah,
of inspiring ideas, but it's still early for them. Whereas in Tokyo, you have this office that's seasoned, been the market for ages. The systems, the processes are down. Like you've got it nailed there. It'd be like that whole dynamic of working in between the two kind of just fascinates me. It must really like at times probably charge you up, but it also at other times must present its own unique set of challenges as well for you
yeah.
personally.
No, again, it keeps me inspired, and
Yeah,
and when I'm too long at a particular point, and you're getting for me, like I need the inspiration. I need to travel. So also the
yeah,
pandemic for me, like I was probably one of the few people that like reached this platinum status of my airline because I kept on flying. And lucky
yeah,
that like I am a permanent resident in Japan. I got a European passport, and I'm a
yeah.
resident in Singapore, so I was always able to travel. But I
Nice.
need that, and we're doing a lot of crossover between those offices because also for the team, it's a nice opportunity to work, like at a different
Yeah,
office, different people, and get them
yeah,
inspired. We also have internship programs for Singaporean students where they do a few months at the Singapore office and then a few months at the Tokyo
Okay.
office. And it's great, and the quality is amazing. Like, there's a whole generation coming up in Singapore that love creativity, and they don't want to work the conventional jobs such as banks or
Yeah.
doctors or lawyers. So it's good.
Yeah.
It's a very good, yeah, good setup, to be honest, I think.
Sounds like it. Yeah, sounds like it. Alrighty. Well, I would kind of like to bounce into a new segment here, something called a Q&A discovery. We can just kind of continue this back and forth. But this first question here, I kind of want to rewind a little bit here. We've been speaking about the present, operations in Japan and Tokyo, and then of course in Singapore as well. But maybe we kind of go back. So before 2002, before entering into Japan, what led you down this path essentially? Like, was creative sort of expression and outlet, was that something that was always sort of like on your radar that you were drawn towards, and you're just kind of like trying to find a way to get that out, and that's where sort of like your work in advertising evolved? Or was it something else that just sort of like came along that directed you down that path?
I think creativity was always part of my DNA, but like anyone, like when you're young and you have to decide, like what to study, like
Yeah.
it didn't really pop up. At that time, the creativity was not, or creative career and creative was not considered
Mm,
as a real job. When you go to art
yeah.
school, people think, oh, you're going to become a poor artist. So I never really thought about it. And then, so I went to study law.
Yeah.
Very boring studies. But I'm happy I did it because it gave me a good foundation,
Mm,
and then I also see a university degree more as a sort of a sign that you're not stupid.
yeah.
Okay, you got your university degree, great, but you
Right.
still don't know anything. So I started my career actually, funny enough, at a bank in Hong Kong, and I learned what I don't want. Like after
Yeah.
3 months working in finance, for me, I thought it was terrible. Like yeah, that you don't make anything, you just move money from A to B, and that's not like what made me happy. And then I was lucky that I met someone who was looking for an MD to run the office, and this company was making premiums, like promotional items, like the stuff that you
Mm,
get when you buy a
yep.
crate of beer. You get a
Yeah.
hat or a towel or whatever, all the crap. And at that time, most of that stuff was made in China because China, of course, was
Right.
the cheapest for production. And like took the job. I was 24 years old, and like I could travel to China. Like and it was an adventure. And like I started to actually like also come up with a lot of ideas myself,
Okay.
which resonates like very well with clients. They're like, wow, okay,
Yeah.
so A, I love it, and B, clients like the
Yeah.
stuff that I came up with. So that
Yeah.
was sort of like the start
Positive
of
reinforcement
my
there. Yeah.
creative career. Yeah, and I never looked back, to be honest. Like remember that all my finance friends, like they were buying Porsches at the end of the year with
Yeah.
their bonuses, and I just stuck to working in something that I love and that I
Yeah.
passion for, and I'm so happy because like
Yeah.
all those finance guys who are now like without a job because the finance industry is not as good anymore, and
Right.
they don't know what to do. And like, and that's for me the most horrible thing that I can think of.
Yeah.
That you wake up on Monday like, yeah, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Counting
Yeah.
your money?
There's only
No.
so many Porsches that anyone can have, I suppose, anyway, right? I think I read
It's one of
something
my
once.
clients. It's one of my clients. You cannot have enough Porsches.
Oh, okay, well, there you go. All right, all right. Maybe we'll change it to
No.
Ferraris or something like that. But I think I read something
Yeah.
once that it was like there was an actual study that was done where when somebody bought a new car, whether it was a Porsche, whether it was a Ferrari, whatever it was, just even a Prius, for example, that feeling of newness lasts like 3 months, and then after that, it's
Yeah.
gone. Like that thrill of having that major purchase, which cost you X amount of years probably in savings or whatever it might be. 3 months
Yeah.
is all that it really is worth to you. And then
No,
after that, it's just
I disagree. Yeah, like,
okay.
I don't really care that much about luxury products and so on.
No, no, nor do I, but it was just a fascinating study, I thought. But
Yeah,
yeah.
but when we started to work on the Porsche pitch,
Okay.
me and my creative director, a guy called Cesar, Portuguese guy, and we said when we're gonna win this, we're gonna buy one. like once in your life.
Okay, all right, all right.
You have to have a 9/11. Like I think
Fair
every
enough, fair
boy,
enough. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
And it was a very, very big pitch. I think there were 10 agencies involved,
yeah.
like multiple rounds, and we made it to the last round, and then we lost it. Like, and we were so angry. So like, shit, man. Like we worked so hard on it, and the deck
Yeah,
was so good.
that
When the
close.
deck is good, when the ideas
Yeah,
are solid and
yeah.
everything. But we lost it, and we were actually quite pissed off because it went to Hakuhodo, although the brief
Oh, yeah,
clearly said at the beginning they were going for creative excellency, and all respect for my colleagues at Hakuhodo, but they're not known for creative
yeah.
excellency. So 6 months later, Porsche knocked on my door again, so like, can we have a chat? And the MD came over with his whole entourage, and
Yeah.
Cesar, the creative director, asked the MD directly, like, why did we lose? And the guy only stared at the floor and saying, like, we made a mistake. That's why we're here. So we won the account like with a six
Nice.
months after 6 months delay, and yeah, then I of course had to buy one. And
You got your Porsche. All right. And it lasted, the fulfillment lasted longer than 3 months, right? It
yeah,
never ends.
I
How
like
about
it.
that? Let's
I,
leave it at that, just in case any of you is listening from Porsche. It never, the fulfillment never ends of having a
no,
Porsche,
I
right?
love it. Like, still, I have one now for a year, and I
There
never
we
thought I
go.
would say it, but look, I love it.
All
No,
right. There we go. There we go. There it is. All right. All right. Well, I do have another quick question here as well. I mean, Ultra Super New and what it's come to represent, one, use of your client list, the number of awards, all these different things. I mean, the respect that you've garnered in both locales, not only in Japan, but also, developing in Singapore. I'd be curious about, like, you've spoken to this a little bit, in terms of the creativity and what really defines Ultra Super New. But I mean, maybe you could expand on that. Like, what makes Ultra Super New Ultra Super New? Like, what is it that really is your secret sauce, essentially?
first of all, of course, the people. I think like we
Yeah,
got an amazing group of people,
yeah.
and
It always starts
this is
there. Yeah.
also something that for me, that's what I tell, especially the Japanese crew, sort of like like no, the client is not king, you are the king. Yeah, and
Nice.
the thing is also like I would always like protect my team first over clients. That's why also the big difference between Kokoku Diary Tent, an agency
Mm,
in Japanese, and us is that I tell clients if you're looking for robots who are just executing stuff, we are
yeah,
not that kind of agency. We
yeah.
push back, we fight for our beliefs, and like our team is everything. Yeah,
Hmm.
because when the team is good, like good creative ideas will come out. Yeah,
Yeah,
and good creative ideas will lead to more success because like that's
yeah,
our business. So when we just have to do work just for the sake of it with clients who are, like, mm, sorry to say, like, for example, bad clients that are
yeah,
just using us as a production, sort of do this, do that. And when we're going to do stuff that we don't believe in,
yeah,
eventually, like, we will get the blame. Even when we say like, yeah, that's what you wanted. So, yeah,
right.
they will always say like, I hired that agency. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's like it's maybe one of the luxuries we have as an independent that we can say like, no, we don't do that. Like
yeah.
also like I would not do, for example, greenwashing. Like I would not
Mm,
make a commercial, for example, for Porsche with a 911 saying like, oh yeah, like it's so good for the environment.
yeah,
I will do that for the electric one, but I will not
hmm,
say that for like a fossil fuel one. Like so,
right.
I would not lie. Like sometimes people say advertising is lying. No, like, we make things pretty and
Hmm.
attractive,
Yeah,
but we're not gonna lie. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and so I think that's a big differentiator for us. And um, yeah, what else? I think like that art gallery is also amazing. It gives us a finger on the pulse of the creative scene. Yeah, so
yeah.
Tokyo and Singapore are both very expensive cities. So it's
Hmm.
difficult for young and up and coming artists to showcase their work. And through our galleries, we can do that.
Yeah,
And we do organize a lot of like events there of like for topics that we like. Yeah, so in Singapore, we did immediately after the invasion of Russia in Ukraine, we did a big exhibition to support Ukraine. We did that together with the Ukrainian embassy. And the good thing is, like a lot of ambassadors came there, even the ambassador of the US who wrote us a letter, like, thank you guys, blah, 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 blah. Or, every year during Tokyo Pride, our gallery is one of the hotspots as well, and we do a lot of work for the LGBTQ community. So we also use it as a way to communicate ourselves and help the community, because I think you cannot work for a company anymore without doing something back. So I think that's also different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm also proud of is that we're quite international in Tokyo. Most of people are bilingual. They speak Japanese, or at least a reasonable level. And most people are there for a longer period of time because it's important to get to know the culture first. But yeah, we made it into an international bunch of people, and I think this is something that a world city like Tokyo deserves, because you could still a very homogeneous society, and it has to open up. It has to be much better. And as we said at the intro talk before, you put on the recording, is that like this week Japan finally opened up. Like, come on, guys, live and connect to the rest of the world, because it's important.
Yeah, well, it's going to pass you by as well. I mean, that's the other side of it too. I mean, Japan there's a necessity for it as well, I think, to shift and change a little bit. So yeah, I hear you on that one.
And not only also for advertising, like that. It's an aging society, and it's actually the population is shrinking. So Japanese companies, they need to find like other markets. So they need to be connected to the rest of the world. So if we can help there, and we do that already for Mitsubishi Fuso, which is a traditional Japanese client, the truck division of Mitsubishi, now owned by Daimler. And so we help them with global communication, and also there we show a different side of Japan. So we had a series of female truck drivers and that kind of stuff, which is, I think it's also important to show that side for Japan, because gender equality in Japan is also still, I think, same level as Zimbabwe, something like ridiculous. They need to also up their game there as well. And by taking a positive approach and communicate like these people, then I think we can have a positive influence on the country. Because I think, similar like you, I love Japan, and it's such an amazing country. But sometimes you think, like, come on, guys, you have so much beautiful things to offer, but let's open up.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you raised there, and I really like that, because it's a point that, like, first impressions when somebody considers the world of advertising, if you're not involved within it, you wouldn't necessarily consider those aspects, like sort of like the I don't know, the social impact that the profession can have on changing perceptions of a culture, of a society, whether it's directly, as part of the strategic, or whether it's just a byproduct of it. I think that's a really interesting point. Yeah.
No, then I think the skin condoms case study is a very interesting one. So Skin is an Australian company. The mother company is a rubber company, and they made these skin condoms, which are it's not latex, it's a different material, so it's very soft. So that's why it's probably skin with a Y. And they came to us, with all their global ads, which were women in sexy outfits, with some kind of cheeky tagline, and skin condoms. So we said, guys, this is not going to work in Japan, because if you want to talk to Japanese, you have to use Japanese models. But there is an Asian model, but she's Chinese, man. That's not going to work. But a lot of West people, they don't know. So we said, let us go back to the drawing board, and first, let's look at it from more, like a step back, and first think about the strategy. So first of all, we found out that a lot of women are buying condoms as not only just men, because they use it in couples as well as also anti-conception. The pill is not
Yeah.
like that commonly used in Japan. So condoms, like are also bought by women. Yeah. And we found out there's no condom brand, not any of the local brands, that communicating to women.
Mm.
Also, another thing that you have to know, Durex failed 3 times on the Japanese market. So we knew
Mm.
that we had to do something different. Yeah. So
Right.
then we also found out that actually, the sex rate in Japan is quite low compared to other markets. People don't
Yeah.
have a lot of sexual interaction. So, and it's still a bit of a, in a way, taboo topic to talk about with
Mm.
couples. Yeah. And
Hmm.
then, like a very important thing is we gave a lot of samples to couples to try. And what we found out is that like almost 99% said like, wow, this is so much better than the stuff that's out there.
Mm.
So we knew that, okay, sampling is very important.
Yeah.
So combine that, like talking to couples, sampling, and like we need people to have more sex. So then we thought, okay, the problem is also when you promote a product such as condoms in Japan, is that a lot of media they say no because like for
Mm.
them it's sex related, so you're on the
Right.
blacklist. So we had to find alternatives, and we went back to a very, very old medium. A newspaper in
Mm.
Japanese, it's a shimbun,
Yeah.
and we made it into the skin bun. And
Mm.
um, we put a condom inside because you cannot sample with a bucket of condoms on the street, right? You need
Right.
to.
Right.
We need a vehicle, so
Yeah.
we used that newspaper as a vehicle, and we had 4 editions in the year, and there's always different topics around
Yeah.
sex related.
Yeah.
And we were sampling those newspapers where couples go, like movie theaters, in the parks, around Valentine's Day and
Yeah.
White
Yeah.
Day, and so on. And of course, all that content was also distributed online. So that was already amazing. We got a foothold for skin in Japan, but then we changed even more, sort of like like we really focusing more on couples, and like beautiful photos, very nicely made, and also like focus on the intimacy between couples, on
Mm.
the longevity, like so the latest campaign we actually hypnotized a couple that were already 10 years together, and we
Yeah. I
hypnotized
saw
them, and so
this.
we put them in a
Yeah.
room together, and that they were meeting each other for the first time, and it was beautiful, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And the reactions were so good, especially a lot of Japanese women. They wrote us like, oh, thank you so much for doing this, because the vision of people, especially Japanese male, looking at sex is just so distorted. They
Yeah.
yeah, they look probably at Japanese porn, which is all around pain and suffering, and it's very imbalanced. Like there's not,
Hmm.
like couples who are like, like imbalanced. And by doing that, also media opened up, because out of the sudden we were able to buy media, because media saw like, oh yeah, no, this is actually okay to communicate.
Yeah.
So we were
Yeah.
able to buy Shibuya Crossing, never done before, like, or the TV space.
Yeah.
So by changing the perception, and really reach like an insight that can really help also sell the product, instead of just tunnel
Mm.
vision, like, oh, sex related, males are like using condoms, and that's why we can only communicate to males. No,
Yeah.
we also did like a large like activation for the gay community around like I said, we launched a special more like gay related condom, and it went through
Mm.
the roof as well.
Okay.
Never been done before. No,
Yeah.
these kind of things, and that makes me happy and proud.
Yeah, 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 I can see why. I mean, I get that. Yeah. It sounds like from what we've spoken about already, like some of those sort of campaigns in essence, like would personify, they would really truly represent that the work that you guys do. Would you agree to that? I mean, is that really kind of like what
Oh
makes,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it would seem
yeah.
to be. Huh. Yeah, that's really cool. And I've got this other question too, and it kind of returns, well, it does link up to this, and it returns to a point that we were talking about earlier, which is, I think, like to be successful in this market, and referring to Japan and Tokyo in particular, is that like you really have to fully understand the culture, right? You have to know, I mean, the
Mhm.
idiosyncrasies of that culture, obviously, right? And in terms of like your staff, you already spoken glowingly about them, like how much they contribute and how important they are to driving your success, or driving the success of Ultra Super New. Um, in terms of that aspect, could you add to that? Like, I mean, I'm thinking originally when you might have launched, trying to understand the Japanese market, like you can read about it ahead of time, but then once you actually get into it, I mean, there's so many intricacies to it. Like, was it easy for you to kind of pick up on this by way of your staff, or did that take time to kind of figure out?
Yeah, it takes time. Like I was
Yeah,
lucky that I was working for an agency before, like so I arrived in 2002 in Japan, and the first years I was, like in charge of setting up a branch office for a Amsterdam agency. So they paid my learning money, and as like the first question Japanese ask you when they meet you, like, how long are you here? And when you
yeah,
say, like, yeah, I live for a year in Tokyo, they always ask you the same questions, like, can you eat with chopsticks? Do you eat raw fish? Which
yeah,
is a very polite way of telling you that you don't know jack shit. You're just
yeah,
fresh off the boat and
yeah,
so on. So now, of course, like I'm living more than 20 years in Japan. So I said, like, oh, I lived 20 years
yeah,
in Japan. And they're like, oh, so you like it? So
yeah.
yeah,
Automatically qualifies you sort of in their eyes,
yeah,
doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you're, like in that sense, Japan is really a close island nation, and
Mm,
it's also what I tell people. Like if you want to come for quick business and quick results, don't come to Japan. If
no.
you want to build a solid business and solid relationships, Japan is one of the best countries in the world.
Yeah.
And also I think in terms of our work, and it's not about the money, it's about like the end result, the work, the pride that you put into it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that is one of the most amazing things that I've learned from Japan as well.
Mm, mm. I
Yeah.
guess returning to that point as well about early days when you were sort of launching, you said you did work for another agency and that sort of helped or accelerate your learning. But even still, probably within the first 5 years, like those types of questions coming your way, well, how long you been here? Well, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it was at that time. Like there's only
Yeah.
so much learning that you can get to that point. What sort of like helped propel you? Say when you launched, USN in 2007, right?
Yeah.
2007. Yeah, when you
Yeah.
launched
Correct.
at that point, you'd been in Japan for, I guess, what, 5 years, right? From
Yeah.
2002 to, yeah, so about 5 years, which is significant. It's decent, but still, maybe in the eyes of Japanese, that still might be considered, not all that long, really. So, how did you sort of like get past those points of issues of trust and everything else? Was it that you had staff that you were relying on heavily to kind of guide you through some of those, I don't know, potential pitfalls, if you will, early on?
Mhm.
Or was it
Yeah.
just the
Yeah. I think
ideas that
like
you guys were coming up with were just,
Well,
next
the thing
level?
is, it's of course, it's just it's hard work. Like it's
Yeah.
just again, Japan is not an easy country. When you
No,
arrive,
definitely. Yeah.
it's for a reason that Lost in Translation was made in Japan.
Yeah.
It's how you feel, when you're there. But it's also the fantastic mystery of the country that like it
Yeah.
looks very
Yeah.
modern and progressive, but you can't read, you can't speak, and everything is different. Like
Yeah.
everything, like from like like, and so it's hard work. You get to know a lot of people, read a lot, and like my first book that I read was like made in Japan, from like Morita-san, the founder of Sony, like,
Mm,
and those kind of things.
yeah.
Like I was fortunate enough that like I could go to school for the first year to learn Japanese, and
Mm,
that at least you have a solid base
yeah.
of
Breaks the
Japanese.
barrier.
Yeah, and also like you can mm, interfere when like, for example, interpreters are wrongly
Yeah.
interpret like stuff and so on. And I think also like if you really want to learn the cultural nuances, you have to learn the language, and
Mm,
you have to understand that. The DNA is so significantly different than from the Western.
yeah.
Yeah, take for example the language. It's not an alphabet language. It's a
Hmm.
character-based language. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's significantly different in thinking. Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
think in combinations of letters. They think in combinations of characters. Yeah, so
Hmm.
the philosophy is completely different. Yeah, we come from like like Greek philosophy and so on. That was the foundation
Yeah.
for Western thinking. For them, it's Confucius
Hmm.
and Buddhism. Also
Hmm.
completely different religion. So the foundation, the DNA is different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also what I tell like Western people when they come to Japan. Take off your Western glasses and take it
Mm,
as it is. Don't
yeah.
question too much. Like just take it as it is.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's a first step of mm, like finding your way in Japan. Because if you're gonna scream and yell when you are at a sandwich shop and there's a ham and cheese sandwich, but you only want to have cheese, but you can't have that because it's not on the menu. Take it as it is. Like,
yeah.
of course, like it's not logical because when they make the sandwich, instead of they just putting ham and cheese on it, they can also put cheese on it. But that's just the way like a lot of Japanese think. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
programmatic.
Yeah.
So take it as it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Okay. No. That definitely makes sense. Kind of in line with that sort of, train of thought that we're on right now, in terms of, I guess, your role with your staff, and you mentioned already you have staff that, are Japanese, and then also some that are foreign as well. And in terms of, I guess, like people within your industry, like the needs and demands of somebody working within advertising. I mean, these people by nature, and you yourself, are creative, and creative expression, abstract thought, all these things are very, highly sought after and valuable. So
Mm,
for you as someone that understands that in order for your business to succeed, you have to have that culture that's, promoting this constantly in an authentic way, obviously. Like, what has that
yeah.
challenge been like? Because you have like, does this notion of creativity kind of like bridge the culture? Or is that something that, you have to kind of cater to Japanese needs on, stoking their creativity and abstract thought? And then it's a different style or approach to those who are non-Japanese, say.
Yeah. The good thing is I got my business partner, Tomo
Yeah.
Murakami, who is Japanese. And we use each other for that. Like, so when
Gotcha.
like sometimes, as you have to play it according to Japanese rules. There's
Yeah.
no role for us, no matter how well we speak Japanese or
Yeah.
how well we're assimilated to the culture. We are not Japanese.
Right.
So Tomo is doing that part. But sometimes, like Tomo is hitting walls as well. And then I can be the rude gaijin, the rude foreigner coming in
Yeah.
and pushing things through. So we can do the good cop,
Play
bad
off one
cop
another.
there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. No, that's
So I
insightful.
don't know
That's
if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I think it does. Also maybe this plays into it as well. I mean, you've spoken this already, but like some of the art galleries as well. I mean, that's something as well that maybe I don't know if your staff is involved aside from like maybe putting these things together. Are they actually contributing to it as well at times? Like, does that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, then yeah.
They like we had staff doing their own exhibitions or putting their own passions in there.
Yeah.
Or like getting their friends there, and it became sort of the beating heart of the agency.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It
We're gonna
sounds
do
like
much more with it. We are playing around, like with a few things. That first of all, our virtual gallery will be launched end of November,
okay.
which is going to be completely different than anything out there right now. Because I think when you look at the NFT platforms such as
Mm,
OpenSea, it's just absolutely terrible. Like it's not about the art; it more looks like a stock trading platform.
yeah.
So we want the art to be central again, and the storytelling. And also, like when you create a virtual world, I want to be able to fly and don't have Earth boundaries. So that's why
Mm,
I don't understand anything of metaverse bullshit with like stairs and nonsense, like
mm,
and clunky looking graphics. So we're going to have it completely different. Again, we do that ourselves and
yeah.
because we really believe in that future, but we just, yeah, believe it in that it has to be in a different way than Mark
Mm,
Zuckerberg style. And we're playing around with also, creating an artist in residency, to do more for the art and also get some more foreigners to come to Japan to do an artist in residency and to see, like what we can combine with Japanese crafts because there's
okay.
amazing craftsmanship in Japan,
Yeah.
but sometimes very outdated designs, like, and how about bringing that together?
Mm,
Um, yeah, so we are ambitious with that, and
Yeah, it provides sort
I
of a
think that
gateway
that's
for
all.
your employees.
Yeah, and also it resonates, I think, very well with a lot of people that want to find meaning in their life, and they don't want to, like work for a tech company, and trying to
Yeah,
optimize the clicks on an ad. No, they're just
yeah,
boring as shit. Yeah, I mean, you make maybe a lot of money at Google, but really, that's what
yeah,
you want to do?
yeah,
No.
yeah.
And make some stuff differently. I think in your introduction you said it right. Creativity usually is the driver for like society. You saw
Mhm.
that already in history. Like in Florence in the
Yeah,
15th century. Like when the Medici took Michelangelo and Da Vinci, it was the start of the Renaissance. Like my city where I am right now, Amsterdam, in the 17th century. Like with the free thinkers such as Descartes, painters Rembrandt and so on. It was the
yeah,
golden age of Amsterdam, or New York in the 80s with Warhol. It's
hmm,
artists, the free thinkers that
yeah,
push it forward, and
yeah,
I strongly believe in that. And also with
mhm,
like technology taking like importance more and more and more with artificial intelligence. That's a part that computers will not be able to do, at least not for a long time. And I think, as Elon Musk said, the moment they can do that, then it's the end of humanity, because
yeah,
they will eliminate us in a heartbeat.
yeah,
Get
yeah.
rid of those hairy apes. Yeah.
Well, maybe on that note, maybe we should shift over to the last segment here. I am conscious of your time. And the last segment here is something called the crystal ball segment. As the name implies, we're looking to the future trends, so on and so forth. And you've spoken to this already briefly, one being like the digital nature of your industry. I mean, that's certainly not going anywhere. It's a lot of efficiency embedded within all of that. Brands want that. They want to see the numbers. They want to be able to make strategic decisions off of all of that. So of course, that's not going to go away. You'd also mentioned metaverse, Web3. That's certainly, some terms that are catching on right now. There's been a lot of chatter about, but there's certainly more than that. And you just spoke about like the NFTs and all of these different things as well. Like, what is it that you're seeing down the pipeline, or maybe it's things that your clients are asking you about, in terms of moving forward in the industry moving forward? Yeah, what do you see on the horizon, I guess, is what I'm trying to
No,
drive
I
at
think the big trend right now is that our industry is going back to the core again, which is creativity. Like
here.
the tech companies, they took over too much with all their stories that data is the most important thing, AI optimization, and blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And like if you look at the world, like 80% of the data is in the hands of two companies, is Google and Facebook. Like so.
Yeah.
When you are, like a brand such as Adidas, and you look at the same data as your competitors, because
Hmm.
Nike, Puma, New Balance, and Essex, they're all fishing in the same pond.
Yeah.
So, you can optimize your data, and then what?
Hmm.
It still comes down to that story. Like, what is that story? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I say Rolls Royce, and you close your eyes, you have an image of a Rolls Royce in your head.
Hmm.
Like it's luxury, and it's like it's from the UK, and it's blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and it's the whole story around it. That's why like when I say the word Panasonic, you probably don't have any feeling. You don't know. Yeah, they
Hmm.
make electrical stuff, but that's it. So the storytelling, the creativity, how you can differentiate yourself, like what
Hmm.
resonates, like to people, like also it's a sign of quality as well, like that's like back in the days. It's a Sony, like Morita, like
Yeah.
the Steve Jobs of his generation,
Hmm.
personally inventor of the Walkman. He said, yeah, it's the Sony. That was a quality mark.
Yeah.
What Apple is now.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So it's important that like that people, yeah, see that and go back, and um, so I'm actually quite bullish about the coming time, for us at least.
I like that. I mean, it's kind of, there's some circularity to that in our conversation. How we led things off. speaking about the profession and, what drives it forward, what drives things forward for you guys, what makes you so successful. And then also to kind of close out this way as well, kind of returning to this point of, like I said, just like purity is the best way of kind of encapsulate this idea. So maybe with that in mind, it might be a nice point to sign off on all this. But I can't thank you enough, Marc. I mean, it's been a really riveting conversation from start to finish, and I've enjoyed it, all of it. So thanks so
Thanks a lot,
much.
Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for those interested in learning more about Marc and his work, you can find him, UltraSuperNew, his company, the website, and also you can find him on LinkedIn. And for reference, the links will be included in the show notes. Um, Also, too, if you like today's show, please be sure to share, and it helps a great deal. You can also rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. And head on over to YouTube. We did launch a channel over there in the last year where you can check out video conversations. And also, the cool thing there, too, is that we will have like a visual overlay of imagery associated with the talk. So you can kind of take it in a different manner. And then, of course, don't forget to tune into the next episode of Life as where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. Until next time, stay curious about life and living.